Hey guys, it's Mark Strigl coming at you from Heavy Montreal 2018. Helix, man, so good. They were one of the first bands to play on the second day of the festival, July 29th. And Emily and Mitch Lafon sat down with Brian of Helix to chat a little bit after his set. So let's check it out. It's a great conversation. I wish we would have had more time with Brian. I think he's going to call in actually to the podcast soon and have a longer conversation with Emily. So yeah, great stuff. Here you go. Mitch Lafon and Emily Strigl interviewing Brian from Helix.
Hi, this is Emily Strigl coming at you from Heavy Montreal. I'm here today with Brian Vollmer from Helix and, of course, Mitch Lafon.
Hello, hello.
How are you, Mitch?
Good.
Awesome set. How did it feel being up there opening up the main stage today?
Pretty good. I was worried that there wouldn't be a lot of people, but by the end of the show, there was quite a good crowd out front.
You did have a good crowd, and you sounded amazing.
Thank you very much.
Tell me what you've been up to lately. I know you stayed busy. Helix.
Driving.
Where did you come in from?
We actually played a couple weeks ago in Red Deer with Lee Aaron, and then so we had to fly out that morning to Calgary, drive to Red Deer. We basically had interviews and things like that, meet and greets all day long. Played in Red Deer, drove the next day back to Calgary, flew back home, and then I flew to Halifax, and I did Swearing At Tuesday morning, the Trailer Park Boys show. And then I drove down to Bathurst, New Brunswick, and I was down there with my wife, and I did a couple interviews there and visited with some people, from Florida, and back to Halifax, flew back on Friday to Toronto, drove back to London, next morning got up, and then I drove to Montreal yesterday.
I'm exhausted just listening to you. So Trailer Park Boys, such a huge cult following with this show, and I have a lot of friends who are into it. I mean, did you guys experience kind of a resurgence when they kind of picked up on you? And they brought you up in a lot of episodes. The characters have compared you to Rush. They've had debates about,
Really helped to raise our profile for a couple of years, but we're always trying to keep our profile up, doing interviews and just get involved in all sorts of things from charities to, I did CBC covering McCann a couple of years ago, and that bumped us up a little bit. But, you're always trying to be in there and do whatever you can. And in regards to the Trailer Park Boys, when we first found out about the show where they mentioned Helix, I actually offered to fly out my own dime if I could go and watch them film, and they said yes. So I paid for it, and at the time, I wasn't really rich. Flew out to Maritimes, and we've been friends ever since, and it's been a very long, rewarding relationship. But if I would have invested that money and time of going out in the first place to meet them and just get acquainted, then that never would have happened.
Right. Absolutely. And you've been at this forever. It's a long time. 74.
45 years, yeah.
45 years. It's amazing. And we're so glad to see you sounding so good and back at it. I've always been interested in the fact that when you started out, it took a while for you guys to get signed. And Capitol signed you guys in, early 80s, 82 or something? So you'd already been, 83, you'd already been at it for a while at that point. Yeah. And so what do you think it was? Because they kind of passed you over a few times before they finally signed you. Do you think it was the fact that you kind of changed your image to kind of fit in with what everyone else was doing? Because your sound hadn't changed that much.
Well, actually, the sound did change quite a bit on the No Rest for Wicked album from the previous White Lace Black Leather album. I think the Canadian company was very wary in signing the band, but we had an ally and a guy named David Muntz, who was with the English part of EMI. And Munzie was tuned into what was happening over there in England with Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and groups like that. And so he saw the potential in Helix to be in Canada's heavy metal act, and that's what we actually ended up being, right? But I think it was a lot of things that got Capitol sign us. They saw the songs, but they also saw that we had developed a following across Canada. We had a huge following in the bars. We had we'd been together for a long time. We had a stable lineup, and we didn't give up. We released 2 independent albums on our own when people kept telling us to go away and forget about it and pack it in. So they knew we had that stick to it.
Fire in your belly.
Fire in our belly.
I like that phrase.
Let me
my
start
husband,
just
by
quickly
the way.
with
Do you
Okay.
with playing the festivals and the importance of festivals, because you've played Sweden Rock and you're playing Heavy Montreal, and we're talking about raising the profile with the Trailer Park Boys. What do the festivals do for you, and are they still important for rock bands?
Very important for rock bands, especially like Helix. That's why I spend almost $1,000 every time I take my sound man out. You can't afford to screw up a gig. We still listen to all the all-night tapes. We critique ourselves. We have rules about drinking, smoking, shit like that before you go on stage. And we always usually have a practice back home before we actually do the gig, even though we played many of these songs for 30 years plus. It's easy over time, especially at a classic rock / metal band, to just a little bit every night start to get off from what the original was, and without even knowing it. And I've seen bands do that. They've been playing for so long and they go, we're not going to go over that song. We've been doing it for 30 years and it doesn't even resemble the original recording.
And just before I give it back to Emily, you do have a new greatest hits out, Icon, with 2 new songs. One of them, of course, is Gene Simmons Says Rock is Dead.
Yes.
Just talk to me quickly about the compilation and those 2 new songs. And does that mean we're going to have a new album of 8 new songs, 10 new songs coming soon? Just let's go with Icon.
Icon was because EMI and Capitol were bought by Universal, and Universal is putting out a series for probably all the acts that were on Capitol Records. Limited runs of vinyl. Vinyl is very big nowadays, as you know. As for new material, we're always writing. We're always putting out new material. When our music wasn't in fashion, we kept releasing CDs, and people would right to my face tell me, look, you can't compete with the money you used to get advanced to you through Capitol Records. You're trying to do, a $250,000 album on $15,000. Forget about it. But I always thought that as long as I try to write songs that made me happy, they'd make other people happy, and that, really I just try to get as good a production as I could. Sometimes I realized that maybe that wasn't as good as what we had. But, I think over the years I've found the people to add to the team, and it's not necessarily money that got those people in that team.
Right. Well, and before you mentioned Lee Aaron, of course, Sean Kelly's playing guitar with Lee. And I think Sean has been one of those important pieces for you because he's brought a renouveau, a freshness,
Yes.
and just great writing skills, right?
And a lot of connections. It was Sean that set it up with Gavin Brown, essentially to do my solo album. And, Sean's a classy dude. He plays with Lee Aaron. He's played for Gilby Clarke, Carol Pope, long list of people.
Coney Hatch.
Coney Hatch. And people hire Sean because he's a total pro. Not only is he musically light years ahead of most guitar players out there, but he knows the business of it. He knows, that you got to keep your word and be on time and all that stuff. And through him, it was through Sean that we ended up writing with Mo Berg on some of the songs. And like I said, recording a Coalition down Toronto, the connection with Gavin Brown. So, yes, I'm always looking for people who are going to help us get to that next level and improve the quality of the band.
Yeah, and I think you also got Sean to that next level, too, because it was a really well-matched match, if that's a good word to say.
Yeah.
Emily?
Well, no, I was just thinking, like people you've worked with songwriting-wise. I know someone, Joe Elliot wrote a song on maybe your 3rd album.
She's Too Tough.
Right, She's Too Tough. Tell me about that. Did you work with him on that, and how did he become involved?
No, we needed a song for the Wild Streets album, which was our 4th Capital EMI album, and I can't remember his name. It's going to come to me in a second, right? But he was in one of the uppity ups in Capital EMI at the time, and he pulled a favor and got that song. We were allowed to record that song, and it was the first song that Def Leppard ever let another band record. And it was called She's Too Tough. I used to call it She's Too High because it was like, it was so friggin' high only dogs could hear it. And my manager, he always used to say in situations like that, don't worry about it. when we get to the live situation, we'll figure it out. We'll change keys.
You got the range. Come on.
Yeah, and it never ever happened, right? So we never ever ended up doing the song.
Yeah.
But then we went and recorded the song. We got to Manor Studios in England, and suddenly Joe Elliott didn't want the song to come out. And by that time, we'd spent $20,000 on the one song. And so then they had to go. Don Zimmerman, that was him. Don Zimmerman from Capitol Records. He used to go out with Sheena Easton. And anyway, Zimmerman went back to Def Leppard and finally let us have a song.
Okay. Interesting story. Well, we are so happy to be able to talk to you today. I hope we can. I want to call you and have a phone because I have more questions for you. But I know we're on a tight schedule today.
I want to thank Mitch. Mitch
Yes.
is the one that set me up with Sean Kelly and Mitch.
And Heavy Montreal.
And what? And Heavy Montreal. Yes, that's true.
Mitch has the
Right.
connections.
So, it's been friends like Mitch and other
Yeah.
people in the business that have kept Helix alive all these years. And that's why we always mind our P's and Q's, and we take care of our fans and people that help us, right? So,
We pay attention to people like you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.